Today we're going to have a discussion with two of our leaders. The reason why I selected these two leaders because they both head up major groups that deals with young people, young men in particular. And so we're going to talk about the police violence. We're going to talk about Black Lives Matter. And we're going to talk about just general discussions about how we can manage, how the police department manage the the protesters. Okay. Yeah. All right. Listen, I've got the two people I'm interested in hearing from is Hakeem Mayfield and James Young III. Opinion of Black Lives Matter.
That's to me?
Yeah, that's for you.
Well, the concept of Black Lives Matter in and of itself, what that statement means, it means a lot to me. Me considering myself a black man here in America, the idea of Black Lives Matter, it basically is giving me the feelings that we have a lot of social injustice when it deals with black people in this country. So for that to be a declaration, for that to be a statement, is only pointing out the fact that there's injustice for some people. And in this case, we're talking about black people. And it means a lot to me, being black, that I have to make that declaration because the powers that be, in most cases, dealing with law enforcement, they seem to disregard that due to systemic racism and prejudice and bias against black people. So that means a lot to me when we say the term Black Lives Matter. However, there's also an organization that has that as its name. So I don't like to get confused and to have people get the misconception that when I say I agree with Black Lives Matter, that I'm automatically saying that I place my connection to that organization that shares that name. So I just want to make that distinction.
Right. Well, you know, I just want to mention some personal experience I had with myself. I had a granddaughter who was in the first protest. She was trying to help people and give them water because they had, pepper spray in their eyes and their face. And then chaos broke out. She was knocked down on the ground. Okay? Knocked down on the police officers knocked her down on the ground. They dragged her, they lifted her up, they handcuffed her, and then they pepper sprayed her in her face twice. And then after that, they put her on a bus, and they drove, because she was at the Barclays Center. They put her on a bus. They drove all over New York City looking for a precinct that was looking for a precinct that could take her in some of the protests. And the thing about it is, she went from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn up to the Precinct 7 in Manhattan, okay, where they kept her until 3:30 in the morning when we picked her up and everything. And the thing about it, my granddaughter is a 16-year-old girl. And the thing is, knocked her down. They took a young man was taking the incident. They took his camera, broke his camera. They took another young person, knocked them off of their bike, and they were part of the protest. He knocked them down and everything. So the thing is, I have a personal thing with the police officers. I kind of, what I think because my nephew was a police officer. He was a state police officer, and I did have a talk with him. And my feeling is, I think that police officers should have some kind of psychological evaluation, um,
Indeed.
every 5 years or every year, to see if they're still mentally fit to do the job.
Yeah, how you doing? My name is James William III. I'm the president and founder of I Am Inc., a non-profit organization in the zone. And again, I think I spoke earlier clearly about Black Lives Matter, right? I try not to put myself in the place only about Black Lives Matter, which is an entity or institution of its own. I like to say all lives matter because I know the history of where Black Lives Matter came from. So it's not only about Black Lives Matter, it's about all lives matter. For the police, me and Hassan speak all the time about this, right? The training part of de-escalating urbanized communities have to be retrained inside the office with the police, right? That's one. Two, the parents and their children have to be trained together, not separately, but together. We got to put both of them in the same room and talk about how to have the proper dialogue when it comes to conversing with the police. We already know both sides are dealing with some type of trauma. And before we touch base on that, we'll never have a good out. We'll never have a good out.
Okay. Now, one of the things I want to talk about, I want to talk in more detail about the police officers, your feelings on it.
Well, I believe that's the right thing to do. I think the defunding part is good, but the problem is where is that money going to? If you're taking the money from the police, right?
Right,
Who are you putting it in the hands of, and who are going to be doing the job correctly?
right,
It's a good idea to take the money from them, right? But if you have organizations out here that you're going to give it to that have not been doing the work, then we're still going to have the same problems.
mm,
Our community going to still be in chaos.
right, exactly, exactly.
And not to sound biased at all. A lot of people saying, well, we don't need police in the community, or we don't need institutions in the community, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Well, no, what we need are police that can identify and empathize in our urbanized community. Stop putting people or police there that are not from the community. Start
Right,
putting police in the academy that's from the community inside the community.
right, exactly. Okay. Hassan,
Yes.
speak to us.
Yes, I wanted to piggyback off of what James was saying.
Right,
When there's a people state, well, that's a security issue in which the police will come from that particular community. However, there's nothing wrong with taking residents from a particular community that's dealing
Right.
with those same issues and having them work inside of another community that's dealing with the same issues. They don't have to exactly be from that particular community in which they live. Of course, we understand there's a security issue regarding that. However, the point of the matter is, like James said, empathizing, being culturally sensitive, and not allowing an institutional bias due to institutional racism deter you from being practical, being reasonable, being respectful when dealing with the residents of the community. The police actually work for the people. Those people, in this case, black people, pay taxes. Every year, black people spend upwards of $1 trillion in that discretionary income. That's what they're doing to help the economy move forward. We are citizens of this community, of this country, and therefore we should be treated as such. We know that this country was based off of racism and slavery. We understand that. In today's times, we have made strides in which we have planted our flag as black people, as a particular culture, having our particular cultural identity. That should be respected the same way that 3 generations of Irish may come here, 4 generations of Italians may come here, and they wave their Italian banner, and that's okay. That's respected. That's accepted. When they have their Irish Pride Day with St. Patrick's Day, you have people from all ethnic backgrounds waving that flag, and there's not a problem. Whenever it's a day for Black people, when we have Juneteenth, when we have Martin Luther King Day, so forth and so on, we have the mainstream culture do not embrace us as the same. And so these institutional prejudices, these cultural prejudices is something that we also have to work towards. And that's why the idea is important. And this is why we have, whether they're from different ethnic backgrounds, whether they're white, Hispanic, Asian, or not, we need those people who share that same mindset that justice is justice and all people should share in the dispensation of justice. And so that's what the issue is. Our police departments are overly funded. Because our police departments are overly funded using scare tactics that the media and the Police Benevolent Association keep espousing, what we have is the police being militarized in order to justify having these large amounts of budgets. And what do they need to do? In order to justify that, they have to show criminality or create criminality. And they do that in the poorest areas, in the weakest areas. And that just so happened to be prevalent with Black and brown bodies. And so we're the ones who take the brunt of the police greed that the brass at the top is trying to milk the teeth of the government. And so when we say defund the police, we're actually saying we want to reroute those funds and take those funds and utilize it for social justice causes in which we can start applying ourselves to be respected and to have the same degree of dignity that everyone else is afforded in this country that doesn't have the melanated skin that we have. And so, like James said, examples of that already. There's a precedent in Camden, New Jersey, in which they have defunded the police. And as it turned out, it was a great thing because now they stripped the police of their budget, fired everyone, and then with the rehiring process, they brought back those police officers who didn't have a history of being abusive, didn't have a history of mental health issues, didn't have a history of sexism, racism, so forth and so on. And so the best of the best got hired for those positions, and the worst of the worst, they got fired, they remained fired, and they took that money that was left on the table and they started hiring other people who can fulfill those requirements that the police are actually not equipped to do, such as dealing with mental health crisis whenever someone have a mental health episode inside the community, dealing with neighbor disputes in which someone can come along and try to educate or at least mediate what may be an issue with neighbors, so forth and so on, before the police is called on the case, because the police are there simply for safety and security. They're not here for all these other things that they utilize only because they have to justify their existence, with these ballooning numbers. And so I agree wholeheartedly with the idea of defunding the police. And as James said, we just have to sit down at the table where the decisions are made and have some type of representation from the people, by the people, to say, well, this is where we need these funds to go. When it comes to education, when it comes to training for not only the police but also civilians who can help work alongside the police when dealing with community engagement, when it comes to mental health issues, when it comes to health issues in particular. These are the things that we have to reroute that money to those type of situations. And I think that would be the start of establishing, like I said, dignity amongst our Black and brown people so other people can see us standing firm, standing strong, and thus being willing to accept that we are to be respected as well. And that's also due to our community. We have to show that we deserve respect by respecting ourselves. So, I mean, that's the long answer, basically, to my views on that.
Okay. You in charge of the group, the young man. What's the name of your group now?
The name of my group?
Yeah.
It's called the Big Homie Mentor Program, but it's under the organization IM, which is called All Heart Healing Prison Master.
Now, what would you do, or what do you do in case of communication with a police officer? What would you do personally?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay, so if I'm faced to have a dialogue with an officer, first and foremost, I was taught to be real conservative. Okay? That's one. Have my ID out, have my identification out, whatever identification that may be. So when the officer's talking to me, right, I already have everything that they're going to be asking for. So what that entails is basically, I don't have to be on the defense, I'm already on the offense, right? A lot of our young adults, me and Hars was in a similar situation where some of our young adults just don't know how to have the proper dialogue with the police. And most of the time when the police come to your community, they already giving you a warning like, all right, y'all can't be right here, y'all have to move. When I come back, I would like for y'all not to be here, right? This is what happens next. They come back with 5 or 10 other officers, because they still here, and now it becomes a defense between the young adults and them, because the young adults saying, man, I belong here, right? And the police saying, well, you're loitering. You're not supposed to be here. So now they're gonna lock our younger brothers up or get into a big altercation, because again, lack of communication, lack of information. These young brothers is learning from their own parents who are at the same age as some of these young police, right? So my idea is to just be conservative, let them do their job, and keep it moving. I'm a firm believer that if you are not smoking weed or drinking alcohol in front of your own building, why leave your building to go all the way across town to do that in front of somebody else's building? That causes an issue. You can do that upstairs in your own household. Simple and plain. Sometimes our kids, man, and not to take nothing from the police, because I still believe that they need to be retrained, period. When it comes to our urbanized community, they have to be retrained on how to de-escalate our young brothers of black and brown color, period.
Okay. Now, Hassan, what would
Yes.
you do if you were approached by the police? How would you
Well, whenever I engage with the police, first of all, I try to keep a sense of humanity at the forefront. I like to let them know I recognize them for who they are, but at the same time, I see them as a man, and they see me as a man or a woman. So I keep that component there, so they don't dehumanize me, and that strips away their view of them as being part of the machine, right? So the police, they work for an organization. This organization programs the police to behave in a certain way, right? But we know that the police, at the end of the day, when they take off their uniform, they are back to being Miss Jones. They're back to being Tom from the block down the block, or whoever. So whenever I'm approached by the police, I speak to them as if they are the same person that I see walking down the street, which then creates a sense of alleviating any type of pressure. Whatever they asking of me, I'm complying with them, as long as it's not stripping away my dignity as a human being. So if they're doing something, if they're asking of me something that is against the law or against my rights, then I may let them know that, but I do so respectfully, and at the same time, depending on how they are addressing me, I still will comply and let them know that this is a violation of my rights. Because what I am a firm believer of, after altercations with the police in my past, I believe that when you going against a police who is abrasive, aggressive, who's looking to so-called get wreck off of you, you cannot win in that situation. So I do like to place myself in losing battles knowingly. I would fight my battle with the police in what's called a controlled environment and a controlled engagement, and that might be in a court of law. That might be with my pen addressing their superiors. That might be in the situation where I have a degree of control and not my physical body is subject to be handled or mishandled by this particular police officer or the group that they're with.
James, I need you to talk about your organization and to tell us what your organization does and what's in it for the future.
Oh man, basically, I'm a partner organization with the Harlem Fund, and what I do is that I try to bring back a lot of humanity when it comes to our young adults, right? That means black boy, black girl, parents, and I believe wholeheartedly that that's what's missing in our community. So you know, building the fundamentals of social responsibility between the two, right? You know, I deep down heartedly feel like most of our problems come from inside of a household that has been dealing with the erosion of community, right? You know, something in the household has been taken away. So that causes about trauma. So when you have trauma inside a household that's not being dealt with, now that trauma is being embraced on in the same neighborhood and community that you're from. So we have to deal with that first and foremost. That's why I'm really like diligently on the ground with hard, dealing with the trauma and the mental illness inside our communities with parenting, right? Uh, Violence. When I say violence, I'm talking about gun violence, gang violence. This is very important. So the Big Homie Metric Program, that's why it was created. It was created to bring back some essence of what the kings and queens really were and what they really supposed to be doing, especially when it comes to organizations.
Well,
Street organizations out here have to be held accountable and have to take ownership of what they have started in our community, in our backyards, right? So we making sure they are held accountable and doing the work on the ground with a credible message.
okay, let me ask you this. What's in it for the future?
Oh man, we're trying to bring back education, right? On all planes, on all levels. So at I Am Inc., we're trying to, in the next 5 years, I want to bring back some bordering schools and preparatory schools inside our urbanized communities.
Okay.
And I want to bring some black and Hispanic teachers that's going to teach our kids properly, not just to get by, but to teach them something for the long haul, all the way to the future.
Okay.
You know, that's what it is for the long haul, for I Am Inc.
Hassan, now I want to ask you about your organization and what your organization does, and then what's in it for the future.
Okay, the Harlem Fund, as the acronym is spelled out, families united, not divided. Our motto is that we have to regain community progress through family unity, collective strength, and an uplifted character. So we strive to do that every day by working with our young people as well as our older people in self-development. We're using self-development programs and resources to help them learn who they are, become independent, become self-reliant, and learning what community engagement means. How to navigate your community to reach those people who you live with day to day, who you work with day to day, in order to bring about more empowerment for ourselves and our families. When we do that, after developing ourselves, building ourselves up, then we're able to do that. Then we can build our communities. So what we are doing, as James said, at this point in time with this COVID crisis, and there's a big need for those people who do not have any funds because of loss of work, we are providing a food outreach program, and we're feeding the people that's in need. That's food. That's food insufficient. Now, what we have in store is mentoring. We are getting back out on the streets, and we have to reach our young people and round them up and provide some type of programs where they can stay occupied and they can stay focused in as far as their development, because the resources are being stripped away from that. Luckily, with what has happened, we can take these lemons from these bad situations that happened on the social level, and people are starting to really push to have some type of new social program is rolling out. So we're looking in the near future to see how we can access these funds that are being made available to organizations such as ours, and using them to build up our institutions, because we know that things can be transient due to the trendy nature that people have. So we want to take the movement, the energy of this movement nowadays, and establish institutions that can be lasting for our communities. And so that's what we're working on now. We're working on receiving funding on opening up centers. I'm actually in Beverly Hills now addressing a social justice issue with my son, when we are dealing with a family that's of color who are being prejudiced against, who are being biased against. And so we actually have some protesters over here now, like I said, from different ethnicities, different races, who understand that social justice has no color. If one person is being dealt with unjustly, that means all people could be dealt with unjustly. And so we're on the ground right now at a very upscale location, because it doesn't matter whether you are of the lowest socioeconomic strata or you at the top 1%. If you have black or brown skin, you are still subject to this institutional and systemic racism that plagues all of our society. So we're on the ground right now, actually.
Right then. Okay then. I want to thank both of you again for coming on my show, and I hope to see you again. Okay then.